men are physically abused by an intimate partner annually in the United States. How many of you have ever walked out of a movie theater because they were playing a scene in where a woman was being battered? How many of you have stayed and continue to watch it because it's just another fictional scene in a movie? Every day, we are surrounded by people who are physically abused, yet we look the other way because it is just another fictional scene in a movie. Today, I am going to inform you a little bit about domestic abuse. First of all, domestic abuse is not confined to physical violence. Second of all, domestic abuse has many different effects on the people that witness it, mostly children. And third of all, the law enforcement and government take it very seriously. Let's first take a look at what defines domestic abuse. DomesticViolence.org defines domestic abuse as behaviors used by one partner in a relationship to control the other. This kind of abuse can be grouped into three main categories: physical, verbal and emotional, and economical and social. This right here is some of the effects of physical abuse. Some of the more obvious acts of abuse is hitting, punching, slapping, pulling hair, and even rape. The more subtle acts of abuse, of physical violence, are that of throwing things, breaking the victim's belongings, or binding and imprisoning the victim. The second category is verbal and emotional abuse. Stephen Hine, who is a victim of domestic abuse, defines emotional abuse as brainwashing in that it systematically wears away at the victim's self-worth, self-confidence, and even trust in their own perceptions. The American Journal of Psychiatry states that 56% of women who have been involved in any physical violence are diagnosed with psychiatric disorders. These tactics are meant to emotionally and psychologically belittle the victim. The victim in turn blames themselves and then clings on to the abuser for validation. The Department of Public Social Services identifies social and economical abuse with the actions of the abuser. Some examples of this are the abuser controls all of the money, doesn't let the victim go anywhere, see friends or family, or even go out of the house sometimes. This type of abuse is used to maintain control over the victim. It's intended to keep that control over them. The unintended victims of abuse are the children that witness this in the home. Children are like sponges. They soak up everything they see and hear, even when it comes to this abuse. The National Center for Children in Poverty, Domestic Violence, and Welfare states that anywhere from 3.3 million to 10 million children witness domestic abuse annually in the United States. The victim tries to conceal the abuse to protect their children and try not to involve them. But Mildred Pagelow, in her research, states that 80 to 90% of the children that are in the homes of domestic violence are completely aware of what's going on. Jeff Edelstein did some research, and he said that there are so many problems that go into witnessing this kind of abuse, and he breaks it down into three different categories. These categories are behavioral and emotional problems, cognitive functioning and attitude problems, and longer-term problems. Elizabeth Carl, who is an author and a researcher, says that these children experience excessive anxiety, depression, they withdraw from family and friends, and they have behavior difficulties such as aggression, tantrums, acting out, delinquency, and these have all been observed within samples of children who have witnessed domestic violence. Jeff Edelstein also states that the long-term problems are closely associated with adult reports of depression, traumatic traumatic symptoms, and low self-esteem in women, and then traumatic symptoms in men alone. Due to the prevalence and the many effects that it has on children, the law enforcement and government have taken a huge initiative in trying to prevent these disturbances. There has been a $100,000 federal grant for domestic abuse response kits. Ken Edwards, who is an inspector for the state attorney's chief office, helped assemble these domestic response kits. These are some of the things that are in the kits. They all have digital cameras, wireless printers, so that they can transfer the data and print it out effectively and efficiently. Many checklists and a lot of references and shelters and hotlines for the victims. The goal of these kits are to improve the reports and the investigations, and also to improve the coordination of prosecution between the police officers, the prosecutors, and the advocates. Lower level assaults, if they go unchecked, they can escalate. William Camphor reports on a high-profile murder-suicide back in January, and what had happened was a man killed his wife, then shot himself just hours after posting bail on a domestic violence arrest. The U.S. Department of Justice states that 1,247 women and 440 men were killed in the year 2000 due to this domestic violence by an intimate partner. In conclusion, domestic abuse is a growing problem. Today, I first hope to have opened your mind and broadened your spectrum on what domestic abuse is. Second, I hope to have created an awareness of how this abuse and how these disturbances really do affect children. And third of all, I just wanted to acknowledge that the law enforcement and the government are taking serious actions in preventing this kind of disturbances. Next time you go to a movie, think twice about what you're desensitizing yourself to.